In Russia this morning, new signs that President Vladimir Putin is tightening his crackdown inside Russia. The latest evidence involving a dual American citizen. Reports say that Ksenia Karelina, an amateur ballerina in L.A., has been charged with treason in Russia on a trip back to visit her parents. The White House says it's trying to get more information. This is all we have so far. Meanwhile, Russian police continue to arrest people who are simply mourning outspoken Putin critic Alexei Navalny. And President Biden, in response, is vowing to hit Russia hard with new sanctions. Nancy Cordes will join us in a moment on that, but we're going to begin our coverage with Imtiaz Tayeb on the developing situation in Russia. Imtiaz, good morning.
Tony, good morning to you. Well, Vladimir Putin's crackdown across Russia is only widening following the death of opposition leader Alexei Navalny as his supporters continue to face arrest and as another American with dual Russian citizenship is jailed on charges of espionage and treason.
An amateur ballerina and recent U.S. citizen, Ksenia Karelina is now a prisoner in Russia. The dual American and Russian citizen was arrested in the central city of Yekaterinburg earlier this month on suspicion of treason and fundraising for Ukraine's army after making a $51 donation to a Ukrainian charity. She was also accused of attending pro-Ukraine rallies in the U.S. Her former mother-in-law told CBS News she fears for Karelina's life.
I'm very, very concerned about her. About her physical being. We know that Navalny was just killed a few days ago. We know it wasn't just a death, it was a murder.
Another American, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, learned on Tuesday a Moscow court rejected his appeal against his detention. He's been in custody since last March pending trial on espionage charges he denies. Jeff Hahn is a Russia expert.
The arresting of American citizens is something I think we're going to see continue, especially because Russia increasingly is engaging in hostage diplomacy.
If found guilty, both Karelina and Gershkovich could face up to 20 years in prison. In Vladimir Putin's Russia, mourning the death of opposition leader Alexei Navalny can also cost people their freedom. Since Monday, human rights groups say hundreds have been detained at memorials in dozens of cities across the country. While for Navalny, even in death, the late opposition leader still hasn't been able to escape the Kremlin's grip. Despite pleas from his wife and mother, the father of two's remains have yet to be released to his family.
And President Putin's crackdown on dissent is potentially widening outside of Russia's borders. A Russian helicopter pilot who defected to Ukraine in August was found shot to death in Spain last week. Maxim Kuzminov's daring, high-profile defection was a big propaganda win for Ukraine at the time. Now, there has been no official comment from Russian authorities about Kuzminov's death. But when asked about it, the director of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service called him a traitor, criminal, and moral corpse. Gayle.
Whoa. Oh, boy, very strong language there. Thank you very much, MTS. Nancy Cordes is traveling with the president in Los Angeles, and she has his new comments on the death of Alexei Navalny. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning, Gayle. Yeah, now this has made its way into election politics. At a fundraiser here in Los Angeles last night, the president called out his Republican rival, former President Donald Trump, for refusing so far to condemn Russian President Vladimir Putin for Alexei Navalny's death. His comments came just a few hours after President Biden revealed that he plans to punish Putin with a major new round of sanctions that will be announced, he said, on Friday. White House officials tell us these sanctions are going to be aimed at Russia's defense sector and parts of the Russian economy that power Russia's war machine. But keep in mind, the U.S. and its allies already imposed major restrictions on everything from Russian banks to the export of Russian goods to the price of Russian oil after Russia first invaded Ukraine nearly 2 years ago. So that makes it harder to find new targets to sanction now. President Biden argued that the best way to go after Russia is for Congress to finally approve more military funding for Ukraine. And last night, he had pointed words for the Republicans who have been blocking this funding. He said they need to decide who they are serving. Vlad?
All right, Nancy Cordes for us. Thank you, Nancy. Prosecutors say a former FBI informant who provided phony evidence against the Biden family has now admitted to having contacts with Russian intelligence officers. Lawyers for Hunter Biden say the allegations against the informant have corrupted the criminal case against the president's son. Scott McFarland has more from Washington. Scott, what are you hearing? Good morning.
Vlad, good morning. The developments come after the FBI's recent arrest of a man named Alexander Smirnov, who's charged with making a false statement and creating a fictitious record about the president's son, Hunter, and ties to a Ukrainian energy company.
In a new court filing, federal prosecutors allege one of the FBI's own longtime informants spun bogus tales about President Biden and his son Hunter after meeting with Russian intelligence officials. According to the memo released during a detention hearing, Alexander Smirnov falsely claimed Hunter Biden and President Biden were part of a multi-million-dollar bribery scheme involving Ukrainian energy company Burisma.
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business.
Prosecutors claim Smirnov had contact with Russian foreign agents, including one described as a Russian official who controls groups that are engaged in overseas assassination efforts.
People in the Russian government would not execute an operation that they didn't think at least had tacit approval from Vladimir Putin.
Prosecutors say soon after Smirnov's arrest in Nevada last week, he claimed it was Russian intelligence officials who shared a fake story about Hunter Biden. The special counsel argues Smirnov's contacts are extensive and extremely recent, and that he's a risk to peddle Russia's lies in its attempt to interfere in the 2024 election and dissuade congressional support of Ukraine aid.
Putin desperately wants that to go away. He wants the U.S. support, preferably all of Western European and Eastern European support, to go away so that he can achieve his goals, as evil as they might be, in Ukraine.
Democrats argue the impeachment inquiry into President Biden should now be dropped, but Republicans will plow ahead with a closed-door interview today with the president's brother, James, and then next Wednesday with Hunter Biden. As for Smirnov, he has been released under restrictions pending trial. Tony?
And we will find out if he really is a flight risk. Scott, thank you very much. To weather now, some folks in California are cleaning up after 2 days of heavy rain and flooding. Strong winds pushed waves ashore, knocking a tree into a house near Sacramento and slamming rocks into a street near San Diego. As Jonathan Vigliotti reports, officials are worried that the storm damage is still mounting.
The latest atmospheric river storm drove high waves onto the beach in Southern California Tuesday.
The waves are pretty wild,
pushing rocks and other debris past the shoreline where crews worked to clear roads in Oceanside. In San Francisco, some residents were trying to clear storm drains in knee-deep flooding.
If no one does it, the whole intersection is just going to continue to flood, so someone's got to do it.
Load is on. Positive rate of climb.
The relentless rainfall drenching the state led to this rescue of 2 drivers trapped in rising floodwaters, hoisted to safety by California Highway Patrol. It's also causing previously unseen levels of land movement, putting homes and neighborhoods in disrepair.
I've seen the road change daily. Cracks that you didn't see before suddenly are appearing.
The coastal city of Rancho Palos Verdes has seen the ground shift up to 10 feet in just 1 year.
You've lived in Southern California your whole life?
Yeah.
Does it scare you? Do you worry?
I do.
And this morning, this is what residents are most worried about. This home has sunk several feet. The street behind me has buckled. The soil here is so saturated, it's kind of like quicksand. And this morning, officials saying at least 400 other homes are currently threatened, Gayle.
Oh, boy, that's very scary stuff. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Now to a beach tragedy, this one in Florida, where a young girl has died after a sand hole collapsed on top of her. It happened at Lauderdale by the Sea, that's north of Miami, yesterday. Authorities say this little girl was digging a hole with another young little boy when they both became trapped in a sand hole. The boy survived. He is at the hospital at this hour. Manuel Bojorquez has the story.
With their bare hands, beachgoers frantically dug through the sand in search of 2 children trapped in this 6-foot-deep sand hole.
We need to contact Lauderdale by the Sea Public Works and have them bring some shovels down here.
According to police, just after 3 p.m. Tuesday, a 7-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy were digging a hole with some adults on a South Florida beach when it collapsed.
Males are yelling, females are buried. We can't see her.
Fire officials say the boy was buried up to his chest.
The boy was about maybe
3 feet maybe down, but his head, at that point, his head was above the sand.
We're trying to get both people now.
But the girl was completely submerged under the sand. Both were pulled out and rushed to the hospital, where the girl was pronounced dead. The boy is in stable condition.
I'm shocked. I'm absolutely shocked. I had no idea that digging out, something could happen where it could collapse underneath someone just hanging out and playing on the beach.
The National Park Service warns of the potential danger of sand holes and suggests beachgoers fill their holes before leaving the beach and to not dig holes deeper than your knees. It's unclear how long the children were trapped under the sand. The incident remains under investigation. For CBS Mornings, I'm Manuel Bojorquez.
Just a terrible, terrible story.
It's a good cautionary tale for those of us who take kids to the beach, because you think it's such an innocent thing. You think that you're playing in the sand. I didn't know that that was possible. You could dig a hole that deep that it could end up swallowing you up.
Me neither.
It goes out to the family.
Yes, it does.
All right, we have an update this morning on the shooting at last week's Kansas City Chiefs parade that left 1 woman dead and 22 people wounded. Prosecutors charged 2 men, Lindell Mays and Dominic Miller, with second-degree murder. Both are being held on a $1 million bond and are in the hospital recovering from gunshot wounds. According to court documents, the shooting began after Mays had an argument with another person, allegedly prompting him and others to draw their weapons and exchange fire. Court documents also say a ballistic analysis revealed the bullet that killed local DJ Lisa Lopez Gavan was fired from the firearm Miller acknowledged possessing. It comes after 2 juveniles were charged with gun-related crimes and resisting arrest in connection with the deadly shooting. Law enforcement says the investigation continues.
To politics now, and the underdog in the Republican presidential campaign, that'd be Nikki Haley. She is declaring she will stay in the race at least through Super Tuesday, 2 weeks from now. And for now, Nikki Haley is also sharpening her attacks, always sharpening them. They've come a long way ahead of Saturday's South Carolina Republican primary. As Caitlin Huey-Burns reports, former President Trump is counting on a victory that he hopes will end the race.
Donald Trump back in the Palmetto State and confident ahead of Saturday's Republican primary against South Carolina's own Nikki Haley.
She's down by 30, 35 points, and everybody knows her. You're not supposed to lose your home state. Shouldn't happen. She just can't get herself to get out.
Dropping out would be the easy route. I've never taken the easy route.
Instead, Haley is delivering some of her harshest criticisms of the GOP frontrunner.
He's gotten more unstable and unhinged. He's so obsessed with his own demons from the past, he can't focus on delivering the future Americans deserve.
The former president was recently ordered by a New York judge to pay more than $350 million in his civil fraud suit. And in a televised town hall Tuesday, he compared the penalty to the death of Alexei Navalny, Russian President Vladimir Putin's political opponent.
It is a form of Navalny. It is a form of communism or fascism.
Some voters here who once supported Trump want to turn the page.
I just think we just need to move on and we need something new. It's our right to vote for who we feel like is the best candidate for the job, and for me, it's Nikki Haley.
But others are eager to give Trump a second term.
Do you think Nikki Haley has any shot here?
No. If it wasn't for Trump running, I think she would probably be the choice.
And the Trump campaign projects the former president will have enough delegates to officially win the party's nomination by mid-March. But meanwhile, Haley's donors are keeping her campaign alive. She raised $11.5 million last month, pushing her on to Super Tuesday on March 5th.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. We're all watching.
A Utah mother who once offered parenting advice on her popular YouTube channel will spend up to 30 years in prison for child abuse. A judge sentenced Ruby Franke yesterday after she admitted to abusing her children. Franke's business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, received the very same sentence. National correspondent Jerika Duncan has more.
To my babies, my 6 little chicks, you were part of me.
With her lawyer by her side, Ruby Franke broke down as she apologized to her 6 children.
I'll never stop crying. You're hurting your tender souls. You're so precious to me. I'm sorry.
Welcome back to Connections. I'm Ruby Franke.
The once popular.
I told the kids, I said, I'm not even going to let you eat breakfast. until you get your chores done.
And sometimes controversial parenting influencer was sentenced Tuesday to up to 30 years in prison after pleading guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse.
He's obviously covered in wounds.
Frankie's brutal approach to parenting came to light last August when her 12-year-old son escaped to a neighbor's house begging for help. Authorities said he was malnourished, covered in wounds, and bound with duct tape. In her plea deal, the 42-year-old admitted to kicking her son while wearing boots, holding his head underwater, and covering his mouth and nose with her hands.
The abuse was horrific, and it would have been apparent to anybody that would have seen the kids that something was wrong here.
Frankie claims she had been manipulated by her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, a former mental health counselor who pleaded guilty to child abuse and also received up to 30 years.
I sincerely love these children. I desire for them to heal physically and emotionally.
It will now be up to the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole to determine the actual time served.
Ruby Frankie, I don't think she has good grounds for appeal because she did plead guilty, and this is well within the judge's discretion.
For CBS Mornings, Jerika Duncan, New York.